Welcome to The Explainer. So let's talk about one of life's biggest questions, right? How do you find strength when you're facing a real crisis? The sermon we're breaking down today dives right into this, and it starts with a story that honestly brings that question into sharp, terrifying focus. So the sermon just throws us right into this life or death moment. Picture this, a 59-year-old mother, she's visiting her family from another country, just got back from a trip, and then she just collapses. A massive brain hemorrhage. Her daughter's on the phone, totally in shock, and her words, they're not even making sense. All she can manage to say is that one devastating line, "My mom collapsed."
Wow. I mean, that story, it's just harrowing. And it really sets the stage for the sermon's whole point. It's about offering a framework, a way to think about navigating not just these huge, sudden tragedies, but really all of life's overwhelming moments, the big stuff and the small stuff.
So in a moment of total crisis like that, where do you even begin to turn? Well, the sermon points to a specific anchor in Scripture, and it's not just a suggestion, it's a really clear, active instruction. And the pastor makes a really interesting point here. In those moments, right, the life or death ones, it's like a deep human instinct kicks in. We start looking for a higher power. And this is true even for people who don't consider themselves religious at all. It's the search for an anchor, for something to hold on to, when everything else is just falling apart.
Okay, so this is the anchor the sermon offers up. It's from the book of Hebrews, and the central idea is this: fixing our eyes on Jesus. But what does that actually mean? In practice? That's where it gets really interesting.
Well, the original term here,仰望, is key. It's not about just sitting back and waiting for the problem to go away. No way. It's an active choice. It's a conscious decision you make to shift your focus, to move your eyes away from the giant, overwhelming problem right in front of you and onto a source of strength. It's about literally handing over your worries to find a new path, to find some hope.
Okay, so this idea of laying down burdens, what does that actually look like in our lives today? I mean, really, the sermon does a great job of making this practical. It shifts from the big theological idea to a super relatable, everyday story. So the pastor tells this story about a friend who works in HR. Get this. Her company is making tons of money, right? But out of nowhere, they announce a huge layoff. And his friend, she is just consumed by it. So much anger and anxiety for her coworkers. She literally couldn't sleep for 3 weeks. The stress was making her sick. And it wasn't until she had this moment of prayer, of actively deciding to hand over that anger, that she was finally able to get a good night's sleep. And here's the crucial point, right? So often, we absorb the stress and anger from situations that are completely 100% outside of our control. We get tangled up in them. The sermon calls this getting entangled. This whole practice of looking up is about releasing that. It's about finding a healthier way to deal with it, maybe by offering support to the people affected, instead of just letting the fury eat you up inside. And it's not just about work stress. Not at all. The sermon points out all these other burdens or sins that weigh us down. Things like guilt, feeling like you can't forgive yourself for something you did a long time ago, even if you believe God already has. Or that flash of impatience when you snap at your partner over something tiny. All of these things, these are the weights we're being invited to just put down. So this idea of actively letting things go, it builds into the next big metaphor in the sermon. And I love this one. It's about framing the spiritual journey not as some quick sprint to be perfect, but as a long, long endurance race. All right, so the passage in Hebrews lays out how to run this race. First step, remember the witnesses. These are all the imperfect people from Scripture. Think Moses or King Solomon. They're there to remind us that, hey, you don't have to be perfect to be in this. Next, you shed the weight, all that stuff we were just talking about. Then, and this is key, you run with perseverance. You're building that spiritual muscle over time. But here's maybe the most important part of all. You're not meant to do it alone. The sermon really hammers this home. We're supposed to run together as a community, to pick each other up when we get tired or maybe lose our way. And this is such a brilliant insight.
Perseverance here doesn't just mean gritting your teeth and suffering through it. No, the sermon defines it as this active resilience. The word is yili, and it's a lot like what we'd call a growth mindset today. It's the ability to look at a challenge or a setback and not see it as failure, but as just part of the process, part of the training for that long marathon. Okay, so we've talked about the burdens we carry and this idea of life as a race. So, what's the big takeaway? What's this anchor really all about? The big message here is that this isn't some magic pill, It's not a one-time fix that makes all your problems vanish. It's an ongoing discipline, a continuous practice. It's about building that spiritual muscle, that resilience, so you can not just survive the marathon of life, but actually run it with a sense of hope and purpose. And you're doing it with all those people running right there beside you. And so, in the end, the sermon leaves us with this really powerful, universal question. It goes beyond any one religion or belief system, and speaks to a basic human need. So think about it for yourself. When the unexpected storm hits, when the ground just disappears from under your feet, what do you look to? What's the practice that keeps you steady? In the storms of your life, where do you find your anchor?